We have made this seminar series open to everybody across our university, but also for researchers coming in from our partner institution at the National University of Huzerud. Today's seminar is, I've invited two colleagues that I met in Warsaw, Dagmara Sidek and Miriam Bernard, as part of the European Media Management Association's initiative to bring researchers together. And we were really thinking about the implications of the war on Ukraine on media management. And we were coming together to think about what are the implications and what might we do together to kind of understand what was happening there, the role the media played in there, and what are some of the questions. So with that, Dagmara, Miriam, I think it would be much better if I hand over directly to you, and then we can I hope you recognize that this is going to be a very informal discussion today. So I'll let you take it away. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francois. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us. It's a pleasure and an honor, actually, to be talking to you about our process, about our research process. First, let me try to share my screen. Hopefully it's working. Please let me know if you can see the first slide of the presentation that we prepared with Miriam. So first of all, our research is about the fear factor. It's about the in my opinion, quite interesting methodology of scoping literature review, but more on that will happen later on during our presentation. And before I give the virtual floor to Miriam, I would like to briefly describe you the starting point of our research, which is basically the event Francois already mentioned, the unique event collaboration of universities, so the academia part, and the more like a business side or kind of association side, focusing on media management, but also kind of joining researchers focusing on media management, on media economy, which is the EMA, European Media Management Association. The initiative was created basically 2 years ago, but last year it was the first edition of this unique event, which combined the traditional academia ways of doing presentations, panel sessions, discussions, etc., with workshops, so joint collaborations with different researchers, with different scientists from different countries, and that's a good, diverse, I would say, environment for collaboration. And the topic that Francois already said on the very first meeting was the European media's reaction to the recent installment of the war in Ukraine, viewed through the prism, of course, of media management and media economy. And the short essence of EMA Hub event, we had over 40 participants who came to Warsaw in November 2023. They came from 18 countries. We had 7 panelists, but 6 hours of workshops via 4 thematic tracks. And the fate happened that me, Miriam, and Francois ended up in the same workshop track number 2, group dedicated to media management. We had 2 days of meetings and the very unique event in the field of media management. In the pictures, you can see the whole group up and down our workshop group with Francois somewhere in the center. Our group was pretty diverse. We had scientists really from different parts of Europe, from Ukraine, from UK, from Greece, from Turkey, from Denmark, Sweden, Poland, so of course Germany, so really diverse team. And we ended up during our workshops with our task to came up with some project idea. So basically, our workshop agenda was focusing on meeting. So after short meet and greet, we had to also present some homework, which was dedicated to the media coverage of the war in Ukraine. how does the media present the situation in our respective countries. Then we had some brainstorming on the idea of the research via the prism of news management, because that was the main topic, the main track of our workshop group. And then, of course, some implementation talks on methods, on our resources. You can see the whole map in here with the let's say, notions or emotions like fear, which is the antecedent of love. We have the news, we have comments. All of it is connected, and our group came up with the research question, like research idea: what is the general role of fear in news management? And our study during the workshop was just conceptualization for the whole process later on. So in general, the biggest challenge at first was kind of to not really get to know each other and start working together, but find a common ground. What is the common ground for each of us? We came from different backgrounds, different expectations, different experiences. So establishing the common ground was really, really hard. And but I think we managed to do it. I think this presentation, this part of the presentation, which is basically showing the final results of our work, of the lots of months of the hard work, is the best evidence. We are still waiting for the comments from the editors of the journal, who are reviewing our manuscript that we submitted after the workshops, after the conference, which was the let's say the spotlight of our research. But I think we did good. This is just my opinion. We will walk you through the process. We will talk more about the difficulties, challenges, and the ways that we use to overcome them in the next couple of minutes. So first of all, when it comes to the context of the study, of course, it's let's say it's trivial, but right now we're living in a turbulent times where lots of things is changing, right? We have the very conflicts when it comes to Poland that is happening actually across our border. We had also the new technology, which is also influencing the media, but also the management part of the media, not only the content, but the management part as well. And we observe, like from our personal but also scientific experience, that fear is a factor, or at least could be a factor, influencing not only these changes but also media management processes. And our aim with the study, we wanted to map the current state of the art, because during the workshop we decided that we will try to basically do the research on the role of media, on the role of fear in news media management. But then during our talks, many brainstorming sessions, it turned out to be a very difficult task to do via online cooperation. So we decided to start with some basic research on literature. We did a literature review. So our aim was to just map out the current state of the art, find potential research gaps, underline the gaps, and then systematize the research, which would be the very good starting point for our future research on, for example, the role on the fear in news media management. So we came up with these 3 research questions. How does fear manifest and function within news media management? What are the dominant theoretical frameworks, whether they are more practical or more theoretical? And what research gaps or limitations exist in the current study and in the current understanding of the relationship between fear and news media management, which were our 2 basic concepts. When it comes to the definition of fear, I think you already kind of know what fear is, but in our research, we went to very nice and basic, I would say, definitions of fear presented by Peter Lang, but also by APA Dictionary of Psychology. So, for example, fears. This is also something that came up in our research when it comes to conceptualization of the notion and of the fear. What is fear? Fear, we kind of see it as a synonym for anxiety, but in psychology, it actually turned out that this is something different. So fear differs from anxiety. Fear is a complex system of emotion. It can be seen as a positive driver in some cases, but we usually associate it with some negative things. So that was why we decided to focus also on the definition of fear. So we'll have some kind of common ground within our working group, but also with the readers of our potential study that will be published hopefully soon. And now, Miriam, the floor is yours. You can talk more about the project timeline, about our methodology, and you guys, if you want to comment, just let us know.
Thank you very much. So yeah, as Dagmara already mentioned before, in the beginning we had like the first task to find a research question, but then after having our research question in mind, we had to start our project. And Dagmara also mentioned that we had like a very diverse team. This means not only that we have a team from people from different countries, but also different experiences. So Dagmara and I, we are PhD students. We had postdocs, we had professors in our group. So we had to find kind of a way to collaborate. And also, yeah, we decided to have like a regular meeting. So we always met on Friday morning to talk about our research results and like how our project is going on. So therefore, we decided to make a Gantt diagram in the beginning of the project, and we defined a deadline. So our first deadline was the EMMA conference in Leeuwarden in Netherlands. And also our second deadline was that we wanted to submit to JOM's special issue about EMMA Hub. So yeah, we had those two deadlines in mind, and according to that, we made a Gantt diagram. And yeah, so we decided to work with the scoping study method, and according to Arksey and O'Malley, which is one of the established scoping study methods. So according to the steps which are defined in this paper, we formulated this Gantt diagram. So identifying research question was in the beginning in January. Also identifying relevant studies was in January. And then, yeah, from step to step, we came to our results in June. Yeah. So, but how did we actually work, and how was the sausage made, as Francois said? So we've started with our systematic literature review and defined in the beginning that we wanted to work in the databases Scopus and Web of Science, because these are the biggest databases in social sciences, and also EBSCOhost, because they also have like very particular communication journals, but also business journals, which were not part of Scopus and Web of Science. And in our process, which you can see in the Prisma model, is that we separate a task according to the database. And we normally had like 1 or 2 person for one database, so that the tasks were kind of distributed. And we started to make, first of all, we started according to different categories. So as you see on the right-hand side, we searched for media managers, anxiety, fear, and news management. And we started that everyone was searching in those different databases, and we made like a big sample. And we had, like, as you can see in the middle, we had in Web of Science about 200, in Scopus 500 papers, in EBSCOhost 100. And we joined this, or like combined these samples and tried to delete, for example, duplicates. And we tried to also use different filters like peer-reviewed articles, or for example, also the language and the publication year. And yeah, with this big sample in mind, we started to check and select our papers according to Arksey and O'Malley. And we made it like that we had like a first rough screening. This means we screened the papers according to the titles and also the abstract. And we in the beginning, in the initial selection, we separated the tasks. So every paper was just once checked. And then we had at different steps in the selection process meetings. So this means like we have it typically in the qualitative content analysis. So after like the first, I don't remember the exact number, like, but the first 20 paper, we had like a first meeting, and we were talking about our results, our observations. And yeah, some of us had some open questions because they were not sure, is this paper really relevant for us or not? So in this meeting, we tried to learn from each other. And so that we had a first selection with in total about 50 papers. And with that, we started to have like a final selection. And in this case, we decided to make it like that every paper was checked by 2 coders, so that we had like a proof that these papers are really relevant for our study. And in the end, we had a final sample from about 18 papers. Yeah, so as I said, so we were 5 coders because we were 5 people in the team. And according to that, every paper was coded twice by 2 coders. And after that selection, we had again a discussion session. So because of course we read like every paper or nearly every paper. So or no, I have to formulate it a bit different. So every one of us read like I think like half of the paper. So we had like a good basis for a discussion. And in this final session, we decided, for example, to exclude 2 papers and so on. So this was still like a process of discussion. And we also, in the session, we started to define our code system. So after this final selection, we started to do coding of the papers, and Arxi and O'Malley, they define already some codings. So for example, like very general ones, like a coding organization, the name of the coder, the database, but also descriptive codes, author, year, then like characteristics of the paper, keywords, abstracts, location, study location, and so on. And we coded content-wise codes like Arxi and O'Malley define aim of the study, study population, intervention type, type of study, methodology, method, outcome measures, important results, limitations, and research gaps. And additionally to that, we added research question related codes. So on the one side, because of our research questions, we defined the manifestation of fair news management process. And on the other side, we defined function of fair news management process. So yeah, due to our relevance and also the research questions, these codes were relevant. And how did it look like? So we had a big Excel sheet. We started to define it like that. And as you can see here, for example, we not only defined like the different codes, we also defined in the beginning how to fill out the Excel sheet so that there are not any misunderstandings or something like that, and that our Excel sheet looks not messy in the end. Yeah, so we had this coding code book, and according to that, we started to code. 2 researchers for 1 paper, and then actually the real, I don't know, work process started, because then we had a lot of results, we had a lot of data and a lot of observations, but then we had a difficulty to find kind of a line of argumentation in the paper. So we started first to make like a description of our data. So we, for example, in our case, we observed that almost half of the papers were published in the 2020s. So really interesting in this, that those crisis related papers are not that old. So maybe because there are a lot of crises also in the last years. The locations were mostly national studies. The type of the study were most of the time empirical studies. So these kind of literature reviews, like we tried to do, they were not published in this case. And in this empirical papers, we had most of the time qualitative papers. So, and with this in mind, we said, okay, now we have to look a little bit more into the research related codes. And we had a lot of discussions about finding this line of argumentation. We had, for example, in mind that we could argue that we have the media organization in the middle with the value chain, and then we could define, for example, that like that we have on the one side fear is affecting the organization from outside, then we have like fear within the organization, and then we have fear towards the recipient, for example. We had like different kind of those factors. We also tried to do a model, but in the end we came up to really define, like, for example, internal and external factors, and explicitly also like research potentials. And when we go to the next slide, then you will see how we did it. So in this case, we try to structure a bit the papers according to internal factors. So internal factors means like inside the organization, there can be fear because of lack of support network, or for example, because of for example, vertical fears or top-down communication can influence fear. We also had papers about that freelancers are, because of the bad working conditions, they also feel fear in their working context. We have financial instability, and there were different factors, and we, on the one side, we tried to define it according to internal one, and then on the other side, we had those external factors. This means, for example, citizen journalism risk. So this paper was, for example, about citizen journalists who are working in crisis areas, and they have to, they have fear because of, for example, that people, I don't know, because of their engagement, the people, they don't like it, and because of that, in this paper, they felt fear, and the paper was talking about this feeling and how it's influenced and how we could avoid it. Of course, also political, economic pressure, and also the media influence, the ethnocentric responses, and also technology adaptation. So I think in the context of AI and datafication and more mathematical context in the journalistic lifestyle, there was also a lot about this fear, which journalists fear. Yeah, and maybe we can come to the next slide. After that, we also tried to summarize those findings and try to explicitly answer to this research question of manifestation of fear. And we had like different aspects. I don't want to go too much into detail and talk more about the experience, but we had, for example, antecedents of fear. So like internal antecedents and external ones, natures of fear, how looks fear, or how can you describe the characteristics of fear, the outcomes, the levels of impact, and also the overlaps and unique factors. Because those scoping studies, I think this is the difference to literature reviews, is that when you do a literature review, you try to answer to a specific question and you try to give an answer to that. And a scoping study opens research potentials, and that's why we were like working in this very free and explorative way. And we hope that we can inspire other researchers with this overview. And then in the end, next slide, we had those research potentials which we mentioned, or research gaps. I don't like the word gaps. I think it's more like potentials. But we defined for further research, for example, the sector level, to broader patterns, for example, of fear and strategic management and emotions. Or, for example, on an organizational level, so fear in the crisis context. On business unit levels, we define some potentials on the functional level, and last but not least, on a team and individual level. So, for example, I think one really interesting topic is, for example, mental health in the journalistic lifestyle, and I think there is also like a huge potential for further research. So as I said, the biggest challenge in this case was to find this line of argumentation, and we tried to keep it as open as possible because we didn't feel comfortable to make it like a fixed framework or something like that. In the end, in our presentation, of course, we had some limitations, like, for example, the databases, the English context. But I think with this limited time which we had, we did a good job, I hope so. We were also thinking about, for example, since we are a very diverse team, to have a look in our country-specific journals, so that we really check it in our languages also. But I'm not sure whether we have a bias then if we have, for example, German and Polish and I don't know publications. So I'm not sure whether it would have been beneficial, but with this scoping study, it was actually a good basis for further work. So our project work didn't stop with this presentation, so we're still working on that. For example, after our presentation, since this presentation was like opening up a lot of research questions, a lot of people came up after that to us and were talking about fear. So, for example, one professor from the Netherlands, she contacted us because she was actually researching about the datafication in journalism, and fear was one category which she, I don't know, just like between the lines, she observed that there is always fear. So she asked us for a collaboration, for example. And I think this was actually the best benefit of this study, to open up those potentials. Dagmar, do you want to go to the next slide?
Yes, because Miriam mentioned the limitation of the study, but right now I want to tell you more about the limitation or maybe evaluation of the whole process, of the whole sausage. So basically, our biggest challenges was not the coordination and communication. We are pretty good and pretty tech savvy, but we had to take into consideration our scheduling, our different calendars, like, obligations in our private life, personal life, of course, scientific and professional life as well, and some language barriers, because you already know that we came from diverse countries. We had to also take into consideration our different diverse research experience and different diverse research positions, which Miriam mentioned as well. And what was really tricky for us was the establishment of not the common goals, but the common ground on the central themes, not the research question, but how do you really kind of maybe not code, but understand the data that we came up with. So we also had to do a collaboration on data analysis. We had to create and use different online tools that really helped in our job. But in general, we also had to consider the issues or notions of publications and, for example, authorship as well. For example, the order of authors in the paper, which was really, really fun. But that was kind of challenging stuff. What was enabling us to do so? Not only the kind of problematic, but not really diverse environment, but what was really in my case, that is why I highlighted it, because I talked about it with Miriam before, that the very good, nice driver moving us forward was the way of communication, non-hierarchical and open communication culture. Thank you very much to Francois for doing it, for making it happen, and empowering really junior researchers. As Miriam mentioned, we are at the very beginning of our scientific way. And it was really nice to see that you can really talk to a professor about your concerns, and he can really give you really good advice, he or she. And we received a whole group, very open, transparent, and empowering feedback. We also had the possibility of working kind of globally, networking resources, not only within our research group, but also in the case of conference, which Miriam mentioned, the professor who will probably, hopefully collaborate with us in the future. We also had the pleasure to kind of exchange and improve our communicational skills, our knowledge, of course, because it turned out that only one person from our group knew this scoping literature review method. And it was really nice to kind of get to know it, learn it, and basically use it. The funny thing, or maybe not so funny thing, is that this person was not finally participating in the research, but in general, she inspired us to do so, to learn something new. And of course, the enablers was the flexibility, the agility in methodology, which I already mentioned, something new, something different. And the very important thing is that this methodology was moving us, boosting us up to the future research. So maybe some tips, some advice, what strategies we applied in our process. We used project management tools like online docs editors. We already mentioned the Excel files. We also use some video communication services like Teams, and we also use structured meeting agendas. This is huge kudos to Francois as well for providing high-tech solutions. We used AI to transcribe our meetings. We recorded it, so it was really, really helpful for the whole finishing process, especially when it comes to writing the paper. We also decided to establish a common ground at the very beginning. What was our goal? That we wanted to prepare a presentation for EMMA conference and as well write a paper, and we really stick to this deadline. It wasn't so challenging at all, it turned out. Of course, we had some, like me personally, I had some doubt that if we will make it, but in the end, we were like even a few days before the deadline, so it's possible. What's very important is the role allocation. We had some troubles for it at the very beginning, but in the end, I think it came up naturally who's responsible for what. And what was very important is that we were very clear in the communication. When, for example, one person was not able to meet us online, it was okay, it was not a problem. But the very important thing is the communication, that you say that you cannot make it on you, or you will do this part because you feel confident in it, or you will do the other part because you want to learn something new. And the final thing, regular check-ins, regular feedback. It was very, very useful. I think it allows us to kind of prevent major issues. But in the end, the constant communication, open communication, it was very, very useful for us. And I really believe, like as Miriam said, that we did a pretty good job. So right now, perhaps, Francois, if we have time, and I'm sure this is basically the purpose of the seminar, for the short discussion. So we're pretty curious, what is your experience? What do you think about this maybe new or maybe not new methodology for you? And how do you evaluate our process based on what you've heard from us? Let us know.
Thank you so much, Miriam, Dagmara. David has a question.
Great, thank you. And thank you both so much for talking us through this, which has really sort of shone a light on a process or on an approach which I have been grappling with. Firstly, quite a specific question. How did you identify your search words, your search terms? Because I mean, I didn't, but looking at the ones you put on the slide, anxiety is one element of fear, perhaps, but there could be many, many different words for which could summarize or could represent fear. So curious to understand, but how you went about so that you weren't too broad but not too limited at the same time, I presume. So that's a specific question, and then perhaps some advice based on where I am with my literature review. In that, for various reasons, I've not followed. I've not been as systematic as you have. I need to be, and as you were. So while I had some key terms, I didn't limit it to specific databases. I included quite a lot of grey literature. So and I didn't have I didn't create the code book. So I've certainly told a story with what I've assembled, but whether anybody else would tell a similar story or get to the same conclusion as I have, I somehow doubt. So my question, or what I'm trying to get advice on, is how might I build on what I've already done and spent quite a lot of time doing without necessarily just going back to square one, or can I refine, build on what I've already done without having to start all over again?
Thanks, David. I'm going to let Miriam and Dagmara answer this question, but I just want to say there's obviously one of the things that they can talk you through is the difference between a general literature review and a scoping study in particular. And since both of them are sort of at the final stages of their PhD, and David is in his kind of second year of his PhD, I think it's a really useful conversation to have. Thanks for that. All I can say is it took us quite a lot of time to come up with those search terms. And even when you look at them, you'll see that it took us quite a lot of time to decide what the string would be that we would search for. It was a lot of discussion around that, but I'll let Miriam and Dagmara take that.
So I think our search term has two elements. The first one is this media management, news management context. So we wanted to focus on journalistic media organizations. And for that, we had a systematic approach in like a theory-based approach. So we looked up for common definitions, like you can see in line 18, we had Albaran, then this Faustino and Ribeiro, and from Eli Nowen, the definition of media management. And according to that, they defined different classical areas of or like they defined classical media types, and we checked with this lens of we want to have journalistic media organizations and defined then the terms. So, and then you can see this red box on the left-hand side, upper left-hand side. And with this knowledge in mind, we made two elements. On the one side, newspaper, we defined, so this is column B, newspaper, news, journalist, television, and so on. And we said we wanted to have like in the search in the database, a combination from these media types with organizational synonyms, so company, organize for organization, firm, management, and so on. And additionally to that, we had our second element. This was fear and anxiety. We just used these two terms for this negative emotion, so that we have the short-term and also the long-term feeling, because as you understand or understood before, anxiety is more like something which just happened in the moment. So you're anxious in this moment, but fear is something more long-term, and we wanted to combine it. And then we, with this in mind, we said, okay, we're going to formulate our search string. And we divided the tasks, so everyone got one database, and with these keywords we tried to search in those databases and tried to find out how are the results, how many results do we have, how is the quality of the results, and so on. And we noticed really fast that if we divide the results like with those different media types, for example, our results are worse than if we just look for media management or news management. And with this knowledge in mind, and like with, I don't know, we were also a little bit insecure, I would say, in this case, because we noticed like our results were not the best. Dagmara and Carolina, our other team member, they contacted a researcher in Warsaw who is an expert in this keywords and databases search and so on. So maybe Dagmara, you can continue in this case.
Yeah, so we had together with a colleague, with Carolina from our team, we had a meeting with Professor Anna Mierzecka, who is an expert when it comes to databases, researching and searching in this research, and she helped us develop the search string, very kind of, in my eyes, advanced one. But she said that the limitations should be very practical, which means that we should, and we did it basically during the workshops in Warsaw where we met in person. We had to map our resources. Basically, we started with, I think, 11 people in the group. The more people, the more research we could do in such short notice. Everyone was also focusing on different research by themselves. So we had to map our resources, and we came up with this solution that basically we don't have so much time and we don't have so much power in ourselves to do more research. And the practical way was to basically limit ourselves and do something that would be really, really, let's say, productive in a way. And as Miriam said, we really did some initial, let's say, some experimentary scoping in the databases. We used the combination, for example, fear and radio. And we mentioned, and we noticed that the articles were not about the role of fear in news media management, but about the radio and the radio frequencies. So it's basically absolutely totally out of our scope. And we noticed that the best combination is just limiting ourselves to these 4 words, 4 combinations of the combinations of these four words for terms in this case. And that is also the question of why we were using perhaps only these 3 or 4, if you count EBSCOhost as 2 separate collections when it comes to databases, basically also because of our resources. If our team would be bigger, perhaps we could expand more. Maybe we could also change the language. Maybe we could also expand the years of publishing of the articles. We limited ourselves pretty much very strictly when it comes to the document type, when it comes to the language. There is also always a possibility of doing more, but we wanted to do something in a good way. We wanted to do good quality research. That is why we unfortunately had to limit ourselves. And David's next questions was about the code book. Yeah.
Wait, I just want to add something, because David mentioned that he is also using gray literature. So in scoping study methods, they normally say that it's important to not evaluate the quality of papers. And as you can see, we had this filter that we had at least peer-reviewed articles. Normally, scoping studies are not like that they define those filters, and we should have, I think, I don't know, I'm not sure whether we should have had any filters at all according to the typical scoping method. But yeah, in this case, it was just a pragmatic choice to define at least this. And I think if you are transparent about it and define this limitation and argue about this limitation, I think it's fine. So yeah, and now continue with the second answer.
Yeah, I just wanted to find our initial search. I think in one combinations, I think it was Radio plus Sphere, we had in one database over 85,000 of hits of like separate articles or publications. So we couldn't make it when it comes to the deadline. It was really, really impossible. And the second David's question was about the code book. I would answer this very shortly. My experience and my, let's say, theoretical background says that it's very useful and advisable to have some code book. It's very important for structuring the data, the research. And even in my PhD, when I'm doing the analysis of interviews with people, I'm also doing some kind of code book. But I understand that not everybody is good with this. And if, as Miriam said, if you are transparent in it, if you explain why you are avoiding it or why it's not really that relevant in your case, I would approve it. So Miriam, do you have some additional thoughts?
I think that there are different approaches. So I think you can work on the one side deductive or inductive or make a combination out of it. So we had those fixed codes in the beginning and we were not really flexible in getting new information. And for example, in my PhD, I'm not working with this specific code book like we did. So I'm using a software for qualitative content analysis. I don't know whether you know it, MaxQDA. And with that, I'm having all my papers in it and I'm reading the papers, and according to the text, I'm exploratively coding my codes. And I think there are different approaches. With that, I'm more open for new information. With our approach, you're more able to answer to research questions and like to limit yourself a bit. But I think it depends, and yeah, there is not a right or wrong for that.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dagmara and Miriam. That was really inspiring. For me, I'm still in the first year. I'm just beginning to think of the research method and how to delve into all of that. So I just had very short questions. First of all, are you doing the PhD together? Like, are you answering the same question? No. So you're like, this is a joint effort in... Yeah, please go ahead.
We are both researching in totally different areas.
So this is a component. Yeah.
Just an additional project, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Miriam is actually specializing in media management, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm more into media policy. So imagine that going into one research project. So that was also fascinating to kind of find a common ground. We mentioned it, I think, a couple of times during our presentation or speech, but it was really fascinating and challenging, but we managed to do so. So
Great. That was helpful because I was wondering, because you sounded very similar in your line of thinking, but you're completely different PhDs. Another thing would be the time frame for your systematic literature review from the search till the second selection. And was there a time where you got too, like it lagged, like you felt that we should get out of here? We're spending too much time. Or what part of the project, the whole research, would you warn us from staying too long? And don't forget yourself in that space. Because, you can get carried away with all that content online. And we were just talking, Francois and I, yesterday, that I told him I have all these, articles just staring at me. So what would you say, like, how long did it take you from the start of your search study to your second selection? What time frame was that? And finally, the coders, the 5 coders, would you be able to share a characteristic about them? Like if I were to choose a coder to help me in something or two, what is their personality? Who am I looking for? Thank you.
So I maybe start to answer the first question, and I can definitely answer with the beginning phase. So defining research question, defining keywords, and I don't know, defining the goal of your study. I think so. You have seen this Gantt diagram, and it started in January, but we actually started to talk in November, and actually November, December, and January was like for defining keywords and so on. So we lost ourselves in this phase, and also in my PhD. So I'm like in the writing phase, I'm writing a monography. I'm in the last step of PhD, and this was like the same in this case. So I think please avoid that. And I think at one point you should be pragmatic and just define it. And the second one, I think I can define how the characteristics of our coders are. So it's just our team. So we coded it. We didn't have external people. And I think we are really diverse. So as we said, different career steps, we're having different background, different country background and so on. But if you would have another coder, it's important that they're doing their job. So if they promise they will do their job, then I think this is the most important one, so that you can really relate on those people, and that you know what they will do. I think, by the way, there is a huge discussion in science about intercoder reliability. So some researchers are discussing whether it's really important to have 2 coders, or for example, if you decide not for more for intra reliability, so that, for example, you code it now and then maybe in the end of your PhD, which would also make sense. But researchers are discussing about it, whether it's really, I don't know, whether it makes sense to do it like that. So I would decide for a pragmatic approach. What do you think, Dagmara?
I fully agree with you, even though we are from different scientific backgrounds. But if you get stuck, talk with somebody. And if there is too much material, just cut and adapt. Make it less. Change the keywords. Do something that will make you feel more comfortable in your study, because if it's too much, you won't move forward. So it's a very bad idea. I feel it in my PhD right now. It's completely different. It's not related to fear factor or media management, but the materials, I'm writing my thesis on the changes of law on law. So the law is constantly changing, and I'm like, oh no, I have to write another paragraph. No, it's a very bad idea. Give yourself a deadline, cut off everything that is after that, and just forget about it. Focus on what's really, really important. I really should focus on my advice as well. But really, Miriam is absolutely right when it comes to the initial times. We were, discussing and theoretizing about the different codes and different words and different methods and so on. And then we woke up in April and we were like, hey guys, we have 2 months or maybe 1.5 to basically read the articles, code them, analyze them, prepare the paper, prepare the presentation. It's maybe not a good solution, but it's doable. So keep that in mind. So the initial parts for me were also pretty tricky. I was also personally involved in doing the workshops. So organizing the group, finding the common ground, that was really, really tricky. We had the privilege of doing it stationary on site on the University of Warsaw, where we got to meet each other, talk briefly about our preferences and so on. So that was like an enabling factor. But in the end, still, I think we met 2 or 3 times where we were just discussing, should we focus about fear, or no, fear is more than that. We should focus also on anxiety, but maybe how about trust? Oh no, it's just too much. So don't do it. I mean, think about it, but briefly, do the work, and then maybe add something if you have the time and if you have the power in yourself. And when it comes to the coders, Miriam, I'm not sure if you remember, but we had some external coder. It was a PhD student from University of Warsaw, actually my colleague. And the most important thing is that the coder is reliable. So what Miriam actually said, if he promised or she promises to do something, they will do it. If there is a slight breach of deadline, it's okay, but please communicate it with me. And what's most important is that this person should be open-minded in a way that maybe it's not their field of research, but they should at least know what they are talking about. So for example, I cannot imagine giving these articles to read to my husband, who is IT specialist, because he doesn't know anything about media, basically. So maybe just he or she should be rooted in this field, reliable, definitely open-minded, because the topic may not be of interest to this person. So yeah, keep that in mind, and also clearly say what are your expectations, what is the aim of the study. In our case, we had the code book, which was like kind of a blocker maybe, and it was limiting us in our study, but also for this external coder, it was an easier way to do this job, because there were clear expectations on what to do, what to expect, with some examples from us. And the thing that we did, so every article was coded by 2 people. It was also a very good idea to kind of get inspired, but perhaps find something different. And when we were cleaning the database, we actually found stuff that was different, coded by one person and the other person. And the less experienced person in this case was, that was my observation, this person was more like detailed and more focused on finding the details, because of the let's say he was not so much attached to this topic, to this research. So that was a good idea actually for us, for this whole research.
I would add two hints in this case. So in content analysis, there are also defined like how, if you would code, for example, with someone else or also just with yourself, that you make kind of a pre-test. So this means, I think like after 10 or 20%, you stop coding and you discuss your results with someone else. If you just code by yourself, then talk, for example, to your supervisor, or if you code with someone else, then that you have like a discussion round. There are like, depending on which kind of method you use, there are like recommendations. And the other one I would like to recommend you, maybe you know this article, but the Academy of Management journal has like a 7-part paper where they show how to write a good paper. And the first paper is about setting the hook and like defining research question and so on. And I think this could be helpful, especially in this beginning phase. So when we had those issues with defining and so on, I think they have like good explanation and so on. So maybe it helps you.
Thank you so much. So helpful. Thank you.
And I wait, the third one I have to say. So I remember one PhD student in our institute, she coded with someone else, and this briefing is really important because as a researcher, you have to be transparent. And if you're not transparent in your briefing, this could be like a criticism or could be criticized in your PhD. So like show that you're really transparent and how you informed the other one and so on. So that's now everything.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Dagmara, Miriam. I hope you've all found something useful in this session. I don't know if you have any comments or anything from anybody who would like to just add. Katerina, please.
Nice to meet you, esteemed colleagues. I'm very happy to have the possibility of being here. Firstly, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for inviting us here today. The topic of this meeting is indeed very important, and your presentation was inspiring for me. So I have a question that has arisen in my mind because I'm still a master's student, and I'm really interested in what challenges may be encountered during the research or a project you worked on, maybe some special cases.
The most challenging thing was the very beginning of our journey. So establishing the common ground, setting our goals, and basically agreeing on what to do. When we had this in mind that, hey guys, we met in November in Warsaw, we really want to go to EMMA conference, we really want to write this article, so we need to find a common ground, we need to find a common topic of our research. And then we kind of went through with this. Then also this whole talk about fear, anxiety, role or not really. The topic of EMMA Hub conference was focusing on the war in Ukraine, so we had to kind of connect with it. But in our research sample, there were very little papers on it, so we had to go deeper and dig deeper, see broader. So this whole the need for adaptation, the need for flexibility, I would say that was challenging, maybe not the most challenging. In my case, the most challenge, like privately, if I may say, the most challenging thing was basically to find time to do this research. But in the end, it was really, really beneficial for me, I would say. And I learned a lot from this process, even though we had some small obstacles, like do we really want to do this? Someone, I think, asked us the question, I think it was Lara, whether or not was there any case that you wanted to really just stop doing it? Of course, maybe not every week, but every month, basically. Like, oh no, 85,000 of articles. How am I doing it? How am I reading it? I will not have time for this. So doing this, limiting yourself, that was also pretty difficult because you see this opportunity and that, oh no, why I'm just focusing on this small pieces. That was also challenging. So lots of challenges in the end, I think, on my side. Miriam, how about you?
I don't have the feeling that we had challenges so that it was like, I don't know, like that I really felt like I should stop it at one point. So of course, if you do teamwork, you always have to know like each other's role and so on. And it's not like that from the first meeting that you know who has which role, who has which strength or weaknesses and so on. So I think it's a process and you have to understand everyone. But I really liked in the process, and I'm not used to it, that we were a team and everyone did his or her job. And yeah, so normally in this German academic context, it's a lot of competition sometimes. And if you're working in a team, the tasks are very hierarchically distributed. And as a PhD, for example, a PhD student, you're in the end of the hierarchy. So you have to do a lot. And I really enjoyed this process. And with these regular meetings, I always had the feeling that this is like a relaxed situation, because normally I'm used to having like night shifts before submission and so on. And with this, it was like a really nice process. Maybe, I don't know what Dagmara and Francois think about it, but it was, yeah, I don't know.
If I just may comment on what Miriam said, at the end, when we had the presentation and we had the couple of weeks for drafting our paper and submitting it to the jobs, I think what was enabling us to go forward was the ability to count on your group partners. So if you did not have time to read the article or like copy something or like do the copy editing, there was another person who had your back and who helped you in your task. And then on the next week, when you were like swamped with work because of the exam, June at the university is like, disaster, then the other person was helping you out. So that was a really good thing. So collaboration, teamwork, great team basically. And the flexibility, adaptation, I would say, maybe not challenges, but actually something that was really, really useful in this process.
Maybe just add from my side, for me, it was an absolute thrill to work with this group. And I think it's really important to recognize in the process of research and inquiry that while we have different competencies and different skill levels in different areas, as I think Dagmara and Miriam have indicated, it's really understanding that at the beginning of a research process, we all know nothing about it. And that's the exciting part. We're all starting to explore some new territory so we could learn from each other. Some people may be technically competent, but people's insight and the experiences add to the richness of it. So I think it's really important for people to bring their whole selves to a research project and to respect everybody in the team in a way that makes everybody, to be honest, because we are all learning together. So it's been a great team, and we continue working together on this fear factor. So if any of you are interested in this particular topic or any aspect of the topic that we highlighted today, I know it was all about the process, but if there's anything here that you think is of interest to you, you'd like to know more about the actual findings and the research we're doing, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us here. That's also part of this seminar discussion series, is to try to expose what people are doing and to find some common ground. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much, Dagmara. Thank you all for your participation